What if I told you that there's a man mentioned in the Bible with just 2 sentences, and these 2 sentences contain what might be the greatest mystery and truth in biblical history? His name is Enoch. Genesis 5:24 simply states, Enoch walked with God. Then he was no more, because God took him away. 2 sentences. That's all we get. But here's where it gets strange. Behind this brief story lies an enormous book with 108 chapters. The Book of Enoch. This book was widely read and quoted for centuries. It was even a treasured text among Jesus' disciples. So where is this book now? Why don't we find any quotes from it in the Bible we know today? Here's what's even more intriguing. This book is known to have been removed from the Bible, but the truth is far more shocking. The Book of Enoch was never actually included in the Bible to begin with. In fact, early church leaders were so terrified of this book that they banned it entirely. Why would they do that? Because the Book of Enoch reveals incredible secrets. Let me give you just a few examples. The real story of the fallen angels, how the Nephilim came to be, and how the war between heaven and hell began. But what frightened church leaders most was this haunting question that troubled everyone who read the book. How could such detailed prophecies about the end times have been written 3,000 years ago? Now you're starting to understand why this book was banned and never made it into the Bible. But the story doesn't end there. This book didn't vanish completely. It was secretly preserved for centuries in a remote corner of the world, hidden away in the mountains of Ethiopia. And today those ancient secrets that church fathers never dared share are finally coming to light. If you're wondering, what truths don't I know about? What's missing from the Bible? You'll find those answers in this video. I'm going to tell you Enoch's true story. We'll discover what lies hidden behind those 2 sentences in Genesis, why the church fears this book so deeply, and most importantly, what it all means for us today. But first, you need to know something. This video is different from others you've seen. I'm not just going to say the Book of Enoch was banned and leave it at that. I'm going to give you the facts. Why was it never included in the Bible? What makes a text apocryphal? Which churches rejected it and why? And the most shocking revelation, is this book still alive today, and how does it continue to influence our world? And don't worry, after exploring Enoch, we'll uncover the secrets of other forbidden books as well. Are you ready? Because Enoch's story will amaze you. Those 2 sentences in Genesis 5:24 are actually the key to a massive door. And behind that door lies one of the deepest secrets in church history. Before we begin, subscribe to our channel to support us in creating these videos. Like this video for encouragement and moral support. Let's journey together on this path of discovery. So let's start. Who was Enoch really, and why does his story remain shrouded in mystery? When you read the genealogy from Adam to Noah in Genesis chapter 5, you'll notice something striking. For each person listed, the pattern is always the same. He lived, had children, grew old and died. This formula repeats throughout the entire genealogy. But Enoch is different. The text never says he died. Instead, it tells us something extraordinary. Enoch walked with God. Then he vanished because God took him away. This phrase is so unusual that theologians have debated its meaning since ancient times. Walking with God. What could this possibly mean? The Hebrew word used here is halak. This isn't about physical walking. It suggests deep spiritual communion, constant fellowship. Enoch had such an intimate relationship with God that the boundaries between them seemed to dissolve. Have you ever wondered why Enoch gets only 2 sentences in the Bible, while other characters receive pages and pages of detailed stories? Because Enoch's real story is written elsewhere, and that story was considered too dangerous for the early church to include. Genesis tells us that Enoch lived exactly 365 years. This number isn't random. 365 days in a year. It symbolizes that Enoch lived in perfect harmony with the cosmic order. He was someone who understood time, space, and divine design. And this is where things get fascinating, because in ancient texts, Enoch wasn't just someone who walked with God. He was someone who witnessed heaven's secrets, spoke with angels, and even glimpsed the future. In Jewish tradition, Enoch is called Metatron, God's personal scribe. According to this belief, after being taken up to heaven, he became an angel himself and began recording all of God's mysteries. So why is such an important figure mentioned in just 2 sentences in the Bible? Because Enoch's real story appears in the Book of Enoch, which was later banned from Scripture. In this forbidden text, Enoch journeys through 7 heavens, witnesses the rebellion of fallen angels, and receives prophecies about the end times. But most importantly, he brings back secret knowledge from God to share with humanity. This is what terrified the early church. It elevated Enoch from being merely a prophet to holding a position almost equal to Jesus himself. But the story doesn't end there. Enoch's minimal presence in the Bible was actually intentional. His true story was so powerful that it posed a serious threat to early Christian theology. Think about it. A man who lived 3,000 years before Jesus ascended to heaven, spoke with God face to face, then returned to share divine secrets with people. This could challenge Jesus' unique position as mediator between God and humanity. So the early church leaders essentially decided, let's limit Enoch's story to 2 sentences. Anything more is too risky. But they overlooked one crucial fact. Truth can never be completely buried, and truth has a way of surfacing eventually. The Book of Enoch was banned but not destroyed. It survived in Ethiopia. And today, when you read what's written in that book, you understand why the church feared it so much. Have you read this book yourself? Or were you too concerned about something and avoided it? The Book of Enoch doesn't just deal with the past. It contains prophecies about our present time and even the future. And some of these prophecies might already be unfolding. That's why Enoch's story is more relevant today than ever. Perhaps the messages he received from heaven were meant specifically for the times we're living in. So what does the Book of Enoch actually say that made the church so afraid? First, you need to understand this. The book isn't written as one continuous piece. It's divided into 5 distinct sections, each containing different revelations. The first section is called the Book of the Watchers, and it describes an event that the Bible barely mentions. Genesis 6:2 contains this brief statement. When the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, they married any of them they chose. That's it in the Bible, just 1 sentence. But the Book of Enoch provides the complete, detailed account of what really happened. There were 200 angels. They were called watchers. God had appointed them to guard and guide humanity. But these angels became attracted to human women, and that's when the Great Rebellion began. Their leader was named Semyaza. He convinced the other 199 angels with these words, "Come, let us choose wives from among the children of men and have children with them." This wasn't simply about marriage. This was open defiance against heaven's order. This was contempt for God's laws, and the consequences would be catastrophic for everyone. But have you ever heard this story before? Because it was one of the Bible's greatest hidden secrets. From the union of these angels with human women, the Nephilim were born. They were giants, enormous, powerful and cruel. They made the earth so corrupt and humanity so wicked that God had to send the great flood to cleanse everything. By the way, we've created a video about Noah's flood that's in our playlist, and you can watch it after this video ends. But the story goes much deeper, because these fallen angels didn't just spread evil, they also leaked information that God intended to keep secret from humanity at that time. The angel Azazel taught humans the art of warfare. He showed them how to forge swords, shields, and armor. He taught the arts of cosmetics, jewelry, and beautification. The angel Barakel taught humans astrology. Kokabel shared knowledge of constellations and celestial signs. Shazakel revealed the secrets of clouds and weather. This was knowledge that God hadn't planned to give humanity yet. And because of this forbidden knowledge, humanity would stray from God's path and forget their Creator. Now do you see why the church was terrified of this book and tried to ban it immediately? Hold on, we're just getting started. Let's go deeper. This story presents a completely different explanation for the origin of evil. The Bible simply states, sin entered through Adam. But the Book of Enoch declares, no, evil came from the fallen angels, and these angels continue their influence even now. This appears to be a claim that could shake the very foundations of Christian theology. The Book of Enoch states, because of this forbidden knowledge, people began killing one another. The earth was soaked with the blood of their sins, and that's when God summoned 4 mighty angels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. God gave them this command: bind these rebellious angels, chain them in the depths of darkness until the day of judgment. This describes a great war in heaven that's never mentioned in the Bible, and according to the Book of Enoch, this war didn't just happen in the past, it's still ongoing. Does this sound familiar to you? Do you think we might be living in a time when forbidden knowledge is spreading and humanity is losing its way? The second section is called the Book of Parables. Here we find Enoch's visions of the future. It speaks of a coming Savior called the Son of Man. This Savior will appear in the last days and will judge both humans and angels. It's fascinating that Jesus consistently referred to himself as Son of Man. Is this coincidence, or was Jesus pointing to Enoch's prophecies? The third section contains astronomical knowledge. Enoch describes in precise detail how the heavens work, the movements of sun and moon, the arrangement of stars. This information is far more advanced than the scientific understanding of his time. The fourth section records dream visions. Here Enoch describes world history from beginning to end, using symbolic animals. This section contains far more detailed apocalyptic events than the Book of Revelation. And the final section is a letter to Noah. Here Enoch warns his grandson about the coming flood. Now you're beginning to understand why this book was considered dangerous. But this book isn't just about fallen angels. The truly amazing part is Enoch's journey through the seven heavens and what he witnessed there. In the Book of Enoch, this is how Enoch describes his experience. The wind lifted me up and carried me to the highest places. It took me to the very gates of heaven. In the first heaven, Enoch sees angels controlling weather patterns. Snow, hail, rain, wind, all these are managed by angelic beings. In the second heaven, he witnesses the prison where fallen angels are confined, a dark place where they await the day of judgment. In the third heaven, he sees both paradise and hell. About paradise, he says, there stood the tree of life, and its fragrance was more wonderful than anything else. But what he sees in the fourth heaven is even more remarkable. There are mechanisms that control the sun's and moon's movements. He learns how the 365-day calendar system functions. In the fifth heaven, he encounters the spirits of the Nephilim. The spirits of these giants who died in the flood still wander there and attempt to harm humanity. In the sixth heaven, he meets seven archangels: Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, Raguel, Sariel, and Remiel. Each has a specific mission. And finally, in the seventh heaven, he beholds God's throne. All right, let's pause here. This might be overwhelming, but why are these accounts so detailed, you might be wondering? Because Enoch doesn't just observe, he records everything. And he passes this knowledge on to humanity. This is what church leaders feared most, because this made Enoch more than just a prophet. It made him almost a special messenger of God. But even more concerning are Enoch's prophecies about the future. The Son of Man prophecies are particularly striking. Enoch declares, "The day will come when the Chosen One will appear. He will sit on the throne of glory. He will expose the secrets of sin, and all works of darkness will be brought to light." This prophecy was written 3,000 years before Jesus, and it has astonishing parallels with Jesus' life and mission. Even more intriguing, the Book of Enoch contains the doctrine of resurrection. The righteous will rise and live eternally with the Chosen One. There will be no more sorrow for them. This is almost identical to what Jesus taught. That's why early church leaders were disturbed by this book. Because it raises the question, did Jesus fulfill Enoch's prophecies, or did Enoch foresee Jesus? Either way, this placed Enoch in an extraordinarily special position. But what's even more amazing is that the New Testament contains hidden quotes from the Book of Enoch. In Jude verses 14 through 15, we read, "Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied about them. See, the Lord is coming with thousands upon thousands of his holy ones." This entire verse is taken directly from the Book of Enoch, chapter 1, verse 9. It's word for word identical. 2 Peter 2:4 also states, "God did not spare angels when they sinned, but sent them to hell, putting them in chains of darkness to be held for judgment." This is a summary of the fallen angel story from the Book of Enoch. Could this be coincidence, or were the New Testament writers reading the Book of Enoch? The answer is clear. Of course they were reading it. Because in Jesus' time, the Book of Enoch was widely known and studied. In fact, 11 different copies of the Book of Enoch were discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls found at Qumran. This shows how popular and important it was. But after Jesus, the church changed its attitude toward this book. Saint Jerome wrote, "The Book of Enoch is not accepted by Jews, and we do not consider it canonical." Saint Augustine, likewise, "These books cannot be trusted because they are too ancient. They also contain very strange things." This is how the banning of the Book of Enoch began, but the real reason was different. Because if Enoch also ascended to heaven, if he also spoke with God face to face, then how unique was Jesus' case? The Book of Enoch was banned to prevent this question from being asked. But the story doesn't end there. We may have asked this question several times, but let's ask again, why was this book actually banned? Was it purely theological concerns, or were there other reasons? The truth is this: The Book of Enoch wasn't banned for just one reason. It was a combination of several factors. First, this book threatened Jesus' uniqueness. Enoch's ascension, his conversations with God, his prophecies about the future, these were seen as characteristics belonging to Jesus alone. Second, the fallen angel's story was extremely detailed. It could lead people into speculative ideas about angels and demons. Church leaders considered this dangerous. Third, this book was filled with apocalyptic events. There were highly detailed prophecies about the end times, and these prophecies could cause people to become overly excited, even panicked. But perhaps the most important reason was this. This book was uncontrollable. Now let's think about it. If the church cannot control a book, why should it fear it? Because the Book of Enoch claimed knowledge that came directly from God without requiring church hierarchy. This could weaken church authority and draw people away from established religious structures. People might think, if I can speak directly with God like Enoch did, why do I need the church as an intermediary? Therefore, the Book of Enoch was banned not only for theological, but also for political reasons. But the ban wasn't completely successful. This book continued to survive in different forms. First, fragments of the Book of Enoch were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. This again demonstrates how popular this book was during Jesus' time. Second, early church writers continued quoting from this book. Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, Clement of Alexandria, they all reference the Book of Enoch. Third, this book was translated into various languages: Greek, Latin, Slavonic, Ethiopic. Copies were made in many tongues. And most importantly, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church never banned this book. For them it remained part of the Bible. Even today in Ethiopia, the Book of Enoch is read in church services. It's quoted in sermons. This book has become a living tradition there. And doesn't this strike you as strange? A book is banned in the West, but in the East it's considered sacred and continues to be read in churches. This situation shows that truth can never be completely silenced. It will always find a way to survive and continue living. We see the influence of the Book of Enoch even today. Fallen angels in popular culture, the Nephilim, end times prophecies, all of these themes actually stem from the Book of Enoch. Many movies, books, TV shows explore these subjects. But most people don't realize that the Book of Enoch is the source of it all. Even some conspiracy theories have their roots in this book. The idea that there is secret knowledge being hidden from us comes from the forbidden knowledge theme in the Book of Enoch. This book has become more powerful because it was banned, because people are naturally more interested in forbidden things. And here the question arises, did church leaders achieve the opposite effect by banning this book? By banning this book, they actually brought more attention to it. They increased people's curiosity. By the way, it's not just the Book of Enoch. There are other banned books. The Book of Jubilees, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary. They were all banned for different reasons, and they all have their own secrets. We'll cover them in future videos. Stay tuned. In conclusion, Enoch's story teaches us this: truth can never be completely hidden. Those two sentences in Genesis 5:24 were actually the door to a much larger story. And that door, no matter how many times they tried to close it, was eventually opened, and we're discussing these things today. Today you've learned part of that story. Who was Enoch? Why is he so special? And why was his book banned? But the real question remains, how did this banning happen? Which church councils made these decisions? How was the distinction between apocryphal and canonical text determined? And most importantly, what political and religious interests were involved in these banning decisions? Let's start answering these questions now. The story of the Book of Enoch's banning is also the story of power struggles in the early church, and that story may be even more surprising than Enoch's own tale. How did this prohibition come about? Who decided this book will not be in the Bible? The answer reveals one of the darkest secrets of the early church. The Bible we know today wasn't created by divine intervention. It was shaped by human decisions, and the people making these decisions had their own interests at heart. First, let's understand two key terms: canonical and apocryphal. Canonical books are those included in the official Bible. These are considered inspired. Apocryphal books contain religious content, but aren't included in the Bible. These are labeled unreliable. But here's what's fascinating. This distinction didn't exist from the beginning. In the first century, Christians read a wide variety of texts. The Book of Enoch, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Peter, the Gospel of Mary. They were all valued equally. The church hierarchy decided which books were true and which were false, but their reasoning wasn't purely theological. The first major step came in 367 AD with a letter from Saint Athanasius. This letter determined which 27 books would make up the New Testament. Athanasius wrote, "These 27 books are the source of salvation. No other book should be considered gospel." This list later became the official position of the Roman Empire. But what influenced Athanasius when he made this decision? First, he favored books that supported church authority. The Book of Enoch, for example, suggested people could communicate directly with God without needing church hierarchy. This was unacceptable. Second, he chose books compatible with the Roman Empire's political interests. Emperor Constantine had made Christianity the state religion, but it had to be controllable Christianity. Third, he selected books that supported male-dominated leadership. Texts like the Gospel of Mary, which gave special roles to women, were excluded. The critical period was the church councils of the 4th century. The Council of Hippo in 393, the Council of Carthage in 397. These councils determined the final version of the Bible. Look at who participated. All men, all bishops appointed by the Roman Empire. No women, no dissenting voices. These councils didn't just choose books, they decided interpretations. How to understand each book, which passages mattered, all determined by them. For the Book of Enoch, they used this reasoning. This book is very old, of uncertain origin. It contains strange stories, but the same logic could apply to Genesis. It's also very old, of uncertain origin, and contains strange stories. Yet Genesis was accepted while Enoch was rejected. Why? Because Genesis didn't contradict church teaching, but Enoch questioned church authority. Does this seem fair to you? That a handful of people have the right to ban books that millions read, but there was resistance when these decisions were made. Many churches opposed them. Eastern churches especially had different book lists. The Syrian church held the Book of Enoch sacred and continued using it. The Ethiopian church never followed these decisions. They kept their own canon. The Coptic church secretly preserved forbidden books. This shows that today's Bible version wasn't universally accepted. It was imposed by certain forces. But what really happened? Who made these decisions and why? Let me reveal the church's greatest secret. Banning the Book of Enoch wasn't just religious. It was a political operation. The mastermind behind this operation was Emperor Constantine. When Constantine became emperor in 312 AD, the Roman Empire was collapsing. Civil wars, economic crisis, popular uprisings, the empire was falling apart. That's when Constantine made a calculated move. He declared Christianity the state religion. Why? Christians were a powerful force. If he could control them, he could save the empire. But control required one condition. Christianity had to be regulated so it wouldn't threaten the state, just like some governments do today. Think about this. You're the most powerful emperor in the world, and millions are reading a book that teaches them they can speak directly to God. Would that be a problem for you? Don't answer yet. We need to go deeper. This was Constantine's problem. The Book of Enoch taught people they didn't need intermediaries to reach God. This threatened both church hierarchy and state authority. If people could speak directly to God, why would they need bishops? If God's laws were supreme, why obey the emperor's laws? So Constantine convened the Council of Nicaea in 325. Officially, this council aimed for doctrinal unity, but its real purpose was different. Constantine's goal was making Christianity controllable. At the Council of Nicaea, 300 bishops were invited. But who chose these bishops? Constantine, of course. Who decided the discussion topics? Constantine. Who determined the final decisions? Constantine again. This wasn't a religious council. This was a political meeting. The most critical decision made was outside the church. There is no salvation. What did this mean? People could only reach God through the church. They couldn't communicate directly with the divine. The Book of Enoch taught the exact opposite. Enoch spoke directly to God without church, without bishops, without intermediaries. This book had to be banned. But Constantine was clever. He didn't ban it outright. Instead, he created a category of false books. What were these false books? The Book of Enoch, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary. All books that question church authority. Sound familiar? Similar things happen today. News that questions the system is labeled fake news, and so began the great censorship operation. But Constantine's plan went deeper. He reshaped not just books, but the Christian faith itself. Take the doctrine of the Trinity, the teaching that Jesus is God. Where did this come from? No Bible verse explicitly states Jesus is God, but Constantine pushed this doctrine. Why? Because if Jesus is God, then his representatives are holy. This strengthened church hierarchy. But the Book of Enoch had a different message. It described other figures with Jesus-like characteristics. This questioned Jesus' uniqueness. This was also unacceptable. Constantine's plan unfolded in steps. Step 1. Identify the right books. Council of Nicaea. Step 2. Ban the wrong books. Athanasius's letter. Step 3. Destroy the banned books. Library burnings. Yes, library burnings. In the 4th and 5th centuries, thousands of copies of the Book of Enoch were burned. In Alexandria, Constantinople, Rome. The same pattern everywhere. Christian fanatics burned fake books, but they were really silencing alternative voices. This wasn't just book burning. This was memory erasure. Constantine wanted people to forget that figures like Enoch existed. These figures threatened church authority, and therefore the empire. Did this plan succeed? Partially, yes. Even today, most Christians don't know Enoch. Some reject him, and some consider him heretical. But he didn't completely succeed. Truth can never be fully erased. The Book of Enoch survived in Ethiopia. Secret copies were made. Most importantly, it lived on in people's memories. Today, thousands of years later, we can read it again, and as we do, we realize what the church tried to hide. Let's examine this great operation in detail. Constantine wasn't alone in banning the Book of Enoch. Church fathers who came after him continued systematically. Their reasoning reveals their true motivation. Saint Jerome, 347–420 AD, wrote about the Book of Enoch. This book isn't accepted by Jews, and we don't consider it canonical. It's too old and of uncertain origin. But look at Jerome's Vulgate Bible. He translated from very old texts of uncertain origin. So why reject Enoch? The real reason appears in another Jerome writing. This book can drive people away from the church. They think they can receive direct revelation. This was their real fear. Jerome feared the Book of Enoch would weaken church authority. Think about it. Why would a church leader fear a book so much? Because that book threatens his power. St. Augustine, 354–430 AD, was even blunter. These books contain very strange things. Fallen angels, giants, secret knowledge. They harm simple believers. Who were these simple believers? The public. Augustine didn't want people reading these books and thinking for themselves. Why? According to Augustine, religious understanding belonged only to church experts. People should only believe bishops, not read and interpret books themselves. But the Book of Enoch taught the opposite. Every human being can communicate directly with God. This was a death sentence for their entire system. Here's how these church fathers operated. First, they formed official opinion. The Book of Enoch was labeled unreliable, old, strange. Then they developed alternative explanations. Enoch's ascension became symbolic. The fallen angel's story became allegorical. Finally, they published ban lists, official documents stating which books shouldn't be read. But some regions resisted. Eastern churches were different. Syria, Mesopotamia, Armenia, churches in these regions weren't under Roman control. They maintained their own traditions. The Book of Enoch was part of these traditions. Does this remind you of anything? No matter how strong central authority is, there are always groups that resist. The Ethiopian church showed total resistance. They said, "We don't recognize Rome's decisions. These are our canonical books." Ethiopia's 81-book Bible included the Book of Enoch. This wasn't just religious, it was political. Ethiopia was saying, "You cannot determine our faith." But in the West, systematic extermination continued. In the 5th century, Pope Innocent issued an official edict. The Book of Enoch and similar apocryphal texts must be burned. This edict was carried out throughout the Western Christian world. In monasteries, cathedrals, private collections, everywhere, copies of the Book of Enoch were hunted down and burned. Along with the Book of Enoch, alternative Christian understandings were destroyed. Gnostic Christians, for example, valued the Book of Enoch highly. For them, it contained secret knowledge necessary for spiritual enlightenment. But the church feared Gnostics too. They also insisted on direct communication with God. By banning the Book of Enoch, they were also destroying the Gnostic tradition. How successful was this operation? Very successful. Gnostic texts were lost until the 20th century. We had no Gnostic Gospels until the Nag Hammadi library was found. The Book of Enoch faced the same fate, but there was one difference: Ethiopia resisted. Imagine, if Ethiopia hadn't resisted, we wouldn't know about the Book of Enoch today. We'd have the kind of Christianity they wanted, and maybe some of us would have turned away from Christianity because of that. Ethiopia's resistance wasn't just religious. It was a fight for cultural independence. The Roman Empire and its successor, Byzantium, tried to control the entire Christian world, but Ethiopia said, "Our Christianity is older than yours. We're not under anyone's control." And they were right. Ethiopia's Christianity was ancient. It was started by the Apostle Philip, so they didn't feel obligated to follow Rome's new rules. The Book of Enoch was preserved in Ethiopia. From there it spread around the world again. In the 18th century, Scottish traveller James Bruce found copies of the Book of Enoch in Ethiopia. He brought them to Europe. After 1400 years, the Book of Enoch resurfaced. The Church Fathers' great operation had failed. Truth proved once again that it cannot be hidden. What happened next? How were the copies James Bruce brought from Ethiopia in 1773 received? Interestingly, the Church still had the same fears. When the first translations were made at Oxford University, Church authorities acted immediately. "This book is still dangerous," they said. "It's not fit for public reading." But it was too late. The Age of Enlightenment had begun. People started questioning. The Book of Enoch perfectly suited this questioning spirit. In the 19th century, dozens of studies on the Book of Enoch appeared. Each new discovery revealed how big a secret the Church was hiding. When R.H. Charles published the complete translation in 1886, it was an earthquake. For the first time, people could read the full text. As they read, they couldn't hide their astonishment. How was this book kept secret for 1,400 years and not included in the Bible? How do you think the Church reacted? Did they admit their mistakes or get defensive? You won't be surprised. They got defensive, of course. What else could they do? At the beginning of the 20th century, the Catholic Church made an official statement. The Book of Enoch is still apocryphal. It has no canonical value. Protestant churches said the same. This book contains interesting historical information, but it's not inspired. Even 1600 years later, they used the same arguments. But society was different now. People weren't blindly accepting everything the Church said. The 20th century's greatest discovery happened in the Qumran caves. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 1947, they contained 11 different copies of the Book of Enoch. These copies dated to just 100–200 years before Jesus' time. This discovery proved again, the Book of Enoch was really popular during Jesus' era. It was widely read in Jewish communities. How did the Church handle this fact? Silence. Complete silence. They barely spoke about these discoveries, because talking about them would expose their lies. But the academic world didn't stay silent. Hundreds of dissertations on the Book of Enoch were written in universities. All these studies reached the same conclusion: the Book of Enoch greatly influenced early Christianity. So why is the Book of Enoch popular again today, and why is everyone talking about it? Information is hard to suppress in the internet age. Delete it from one place, it pops up elsewhere. Anyone can read the Book of Enoch now. As they read, people realize there's so much we're not being told. Especially younger generations show great interest in this book. Why? Because this generation questions authority. They don't believe what's presented as truth. The Book of Enoch fits this mood. It offers an alternative reality. Today we see the Book of Enoch's influence everywhere. Hollywood movies feature fallen angels. Netflix series discuss the Nephilim. Popular novels describe apocalyptic events. But most people still don't know the Book of Enoch is the source of it all. This raises a question: is the Church trying to stop this influence? Of course it is. The modern Church strategy is don't reject the Book of Enoch entirely. Instead, label it an interesting historical text. This strategy partly works. Many Christians still regard the Book of Enoch as unreliable, but it's not entirely successful. The truth is out there. Most importantly, the Ethiopian Church still resists. They say, the Book of Enoch is sacred to us. You cannot change that. Who do you think is right in this situation? Ethiopia, which has protected this book for 1700 years, or the Western churches that banned it? If you've listened this far, your answer is probably clear. I think the answer is clear. Those who protect truth are always right. Now we come to the real question. What does this story teach us? First, authority isn't always right. Church leaders said for 1600 years, this book is dangerous, but the real danger was losing their power. Second, truth can never be completely hidden. The Book of Enoch was banned, burned, nearly forgotten, but ultimately it returned. Third, people have the right to think for themselves. The church saw people as simple believers. They didn't want them reading and interpreting books independently. But this approach was wrong. Fourth, alternative voices are important. With only one viewpoint, we'd never know the truth. Thanks to Ethiopia's resistance, today we know Enoch's story. This story doesn't end with the Book of Enoch. There are many more banned books. The Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, the Gospel of Philip. Each has its own secrets. They're all banned for different reasons. We'll reveal these secrets in our next videos. Follow us and let us know when we make these videos. Now we come to the critical question: what should we do today? Knowing this information, how should we approach the Book of Enoch? Should we consider it part of the Bible or view it as a historical text? Most importantly, what does this book mean for us today? Are its prophecies being fulfilled? What does the story of fallen angels mean for our time? These questions aren't just academic. They affect our faith, our worldview, even our daily lives. Let's unpack them. What does the Book of Enoch mean for today's world? Are the prophecies in that book coming true? Most importantly, how should this information change our lives? Because now we know the truth, and when you know the truth, you understand your responsibilities. Now we arrive at the crucial question: is the Book of Enoch merely an ancient tale, or does it carry messages that speak directly to our times? The answer might astound you. What's written in that ancient book shows remarkable parallels with what we're experiencing today. Remember, in the Book of Enoch, fallen angels taught humanity forbidden knowledge. Azazel taught warfare, Barakel taught astrology, Kokabel revealed the secrets of omens, and Shazakel unveiled the mysteries of clouds and sky. Pause for a moment. Doesn't this sound strikingly familiar? Something remarkably similar is happening in our world today. Technology, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, climate manipulation. Humanity has never possessed such powerful knowledge. But here's the question: is this information truly being used for humanity's benefit? Consider this: how do social media algorithms manipulate our minds? How far might genetic experiments go? What happens when artificial intelligence breaks free from our control? According to the Book of Enoch, the spread of forbidden knowledge marked the beginning of an era of great corruption. The corruption became so severe that God had to send the flood. What about today? Are we standing on the edge of a similar period? The Book of Enoch states, people began destroying one another because of this forbidden knowledge. The earth was soaked with the blood of their sins. How perfectly does this description fit our modern world? Technological weapons, cyber warfare, digital manipulation. Just like in Enoch's time, knowledge has become power, and that power is being misused. But what's truly striking is the Book of Enoch's discussion of the Nephilim. Remember, the Nephilim were born from the union of fallen angels with human women. These giants filled the earth with tyranny. Genesis 6:4 tells us, in those days and afterward there were Nephilim on the earth. What does an afterward mean? It means the Nephilim existed even after the flood. This raises a critical question: do Nephilim-like beings exist today? I'm not talking about physical giants, but spiritual ones. Some people today wield such immense power that they can influence the destiny of millions. Tech moguls, media empires, controllers of financial systems. These individuals possess almost giant-like power compared to ordinary people. And most importantly, how do they use these powers? For humanity's good or their own interests? The Book of Enoch describes the Nephilim this way: they were mighty but unjust. They oppressed the weak and filled the earth with violence. Doesn't this description also capture today's powerful elites? Another striking aspect of the Book of Enoch is its end times prophecies. The book declares, the day will come when the righteous suffer persecution, lies will appear as truth, and truth will be branded as lies. People won't know what's real and what's false. Doesn't this perfectly describe our current post-truth era? Fake news, manipulated images, propaganda. With artificial intelligence advancing, it's become increasingly difficult to distinguish what's real from what's fabricated. The Book of Enoch states, in the last days, people will create their own laws, they'll reject God's laws, and establish their own version of justice. Doesn't this describe today's relativistic morality? The concept of absolute truth is now rejected. Everyone has their own truth, but the Book of Enoch warns this is dangerous. Because without absolute truth, there's no justice, and without justice, might makes right. This is the Book of Enoch's most critical message for today. A spiritual war is raging. The fallen angels and their influence described in that book continue today. They've simply changed form. Once they taught physical power, now they teach mental manipulation. Once they taught weapon making, now they teach mass control. So what should we do in this situation? Should we begin walking with God like Enoch did? According to the Book of Enoch, there's a clear victor in this spiritual battle. God will ultimately triumph. The Son of Man will come and sit on the throne of righteousness. All injustice will end. But we don't have to wait for that moment, because this Son of Man has already come, Jesus. This reveals the Book of Enoch's profound importance. It foretold Jesus' coming 3,000 years in advance, not just his arrival, but also his mission. He will sit on the throne of righteousness. He will expose the secrets of sin. All works of darkness will be brought to light. Isn't that exactly what Jesus accomplished? But Enoch's prophecies aren't only about the past, they're also crystal clear about the future. In the last days, the chosen ones will gather together. They'll stand against the evil forces ruling the world. Is this prophecy being fulfilled? In recent years, people worldwide are awakening. They're questioning the system. They're beginning to think for themselves. Is this coincidence or the fulfillment of Enoch's prophecy? The Book of Enoch says, in those days people will seek hidden things. They'll desire to know concealed truths. This is exactly what we're experiencing today. People are searching for forbidden books. They want to know hidden history. They want to discover truths they haven't been told. Could this be one of Enoch's prophecies coming to pass? But most striking are the Book of Enoch's details about spiritual warfare. The book states, the fallen angels are bound in chains, yet their influence continues. The forbidden knowledge they taught keeps spreading among people. What does this mean? According to the Book of Enoch, while the fallen angels' physical presence has been blocked, their systems still operate. The order they established continues. Can you see these systems today? Where might makes right, where money is everything, where morality is relative. Enoch describes it this way. When people go astray, they begin believing their way is the right way, and this continues for generations. This perfectly describes today's concept of the new normal. What was once considered wrong is now deemed acceptable. This normalization is so widespread that no one questions it anymore. But the Book of Enoch doesn't stop there. It foresees the consequences. People will lose trust in each other. Families will crumble. Brother will turn against brother. Most importantly, people will forget God. Doesn't this describe our current society? Trust crisis, family breakdown, social polarization, secularization. All of this appears in Enoch's prophecies from 3,000 years ago. So what does it mean when these prophecies are fulfilled? According to the Book of Enoch, this signals that the end times are approaching. End times doesn't mean the world's destruction. It means one age ending and a new age beginning. Enoch puts it this way: the dominion of dark powers will end. Righteousness will reign again. The chosen ones will inherit God's kingdom. Is this prophecy still pending, or has it begun to unfold? The answer depends on your perspective. If you look only at physical changes, you'd say not yet. But if you examine spiritual changes, you see a different picture. In recent years, millions worldwide are experiencing a spiritual awakening. People are discovering their inner worlds. They're seeking personal relationships with God. Could this be the fulfillment of Enoch's prophecy about the gathering of the chosen ones? Do you feel you're part of this spiritual awakening? Do you have moments when you feel chosen? The Book of Enoch is very clear. In the last days, God will call his chosen ones. They'll come from across the world. Together they'll build God's kingdom. This isn't just something that will happen in the future. It could be happening right now. In the internet age, like-minded people can unite across geographical boundaries. Spiritual seekers can find each other. This could be one of Enoch's prophecies unfolding. But most importantly, the Book of Enoch isn't just prophecy. It also offers an action plan. It tells the chosen ones what to do. First, walk with God. Maintain constant communion with God, just as Enoch did. Second, discern right from wrong. This is the most critical skill in this age. Being able to recognize what's from God and what isn't, when everything is mixed up. Third, speak truth without fear. Whatever happens, don't hide the truth you know. Fourth, support one another. The chosen ones don't fight alone. They act together. How relevant is this action plan today? Extremely relevant. Because the age we're living in, just like Enoch's time, is an era of spiritual warfare. It's impossible to remain neutral in this war. You're either on God's side or the other side. The Book of Enoch is crystal clear. There's no middle ground. You either belong to the light or to the darkness. So what are the manifestations of this spiritual warfare today? According to the Book of Enoch, this war is invisible but very real. The battle lines are now becoming clear. On one side is the old system. This system believes power makes right, money is everything, morality is relative. On the other side is the new awakening. People searching for truth, exploring their spiritual journeys, questioning the system. Which side are you on in this war? Which group do you feel you belong to? The Book of Enoch sees this distinction clearly. There are striking similarities between the fallen angel system of that time and today's global elite system. What did the fallen angels do? They taught people forbidden knowledge and controlled them through this knowledge. What do today's powerful elites do? They also control information. They decide which information to spread and which to hide. Social media algorithms, news filtering systems, search engine manipulation, these are all modern methods of information control. But here's what's truly striking. The Book of Enoch says this situation is temporary. The dominion of fallen angels won't last forever. The time will come when all their secret works will be revealed. Is this prophecy being fulfilled? How many secret documents have leaked in recent years? How many conspiracy theories have proven true? How much hidden information has been exposed? WikiLeaks, the Panama Papers, various leaks. Could all of this be part of Enoch's prophecy about the revelation of hidden things? The Book of Enoch declares, in the last days, nothing hidden will remain hidden, everything will come to light. Doesn't that exactly describe our current age? Nothing can be completely hidden anymore, everything somehow gets leaked, exposed. Is this coincidence or divine plan? But the Book of Enoch isn't just talking about system collapse, it also describes what happens after that collapse. Righteousness will rule, injustice will cease, the chosen ones will live in God's kingdom. What does this kingdom of God mean? It doesn't just mean heaven in the future. It's something that can happen right now. Kingdom of God means a way of life where God's values prevail. Love, justice, mercy, compassion, righteousness. A life where these values take priority. This lifestyle can be individual or communal. The Book of Enoch gives an interesting detail. God's kingdom won't come through one great revolution. It will come gradually, through changed hearts. Doesn't this perfectly describe today's spiritual awakening movement? Millions of people are simultaneously exploring their inner worlds. They're questioning old value systems and embracing new ones. Could this be the kingdom that comes through changed hearts that Enoch spoke of? Most importantly, this change isn't only individual. It has social impact too. Climate change awareness, social justice movements, the search for alternative lifestyles. All of this results from questioning the old system. Not all these movements are perfect, of course. But what are they fundamentally seeking? A more just, more compassionate, more sustainable world. Aren't these the values of God's kingdom? The Book of Enoch gives a critical warning at this point. Be careful in times of change. The powers of darkness will also present their counterfeits. What does this mean? We must distinguish between true spiritual awakening and false spiritual currents. The devil can also masquerade as an angel of light. There are many spiritual movements today, but are they all from God? The Book of Enoch provides clear criteria for making this distinction. First, look at the fruit. True spiritual action increases love and decreases pride. Any action contradicting God's written word isn't from God. Third, does it glorify Jesus? True spiritual action recognizes Jesus' lordship. Fourth, does it build community? God's movement unites people, not divides them. How useful are these criteria for evaluating today's spiritual currents? Very useful, because there are many false spiritual movements. Some are based only on feeling good. Some sell expensive seminars. Some become guru worship. But if you apply Enoch's criteria, you'll know what's real and what's fake. The Book of Enoch also says, in the last days, many false prophets will arise. They'll show great signs, but their purpose is to deceive people. Is this prophecy being fulfilled today? How many spiritual gurus are on social media? How many take people's money? How many almost put themselves in God's place? Does this relate to Enoch's warning? Have you or anyone you know ever fallen for such false spiritual leaders? But most importantly, the Book of Enoch doesn't just give warnings, it offers solutions. The chosen ones won't fall for these deceptions because they will walk with God. What does walking with God mean? This is what Enoch did, being in constant communication with God. This communication isn't just prayer, it's feeling God's presence in every moment of life. When you work, when you speak, when you make decisions, always asking, what does God want in this situation? This way of living is the most powerful protection against false spiritual movements, because the person with a real relationship with God immediately recognizes counterfeits. But now we come to perhaps the Book of Enoch's most striking prophecy, the acceleration of time. Enoch says, in the last days, time will speed up, days will be shortened, people will lose track of time. Does this prophecy sound familiar? How many people today say, time is flying by? It feels like days are shorter than they used to be. Is this just the effect of aging, or is time really speeding up? Do you also feel that time passes faster than before? Have you ever wondered where this feeling comes from? According to the Book of Enoch, this is no coincidence. It's a sign of the end times. God will hasten the time, for the days will be difficult for the chosen ones. If these days weren't shortened, no one would be saved. Doesn't this remind you of Jesus' words in Matthew 24:22? If those days were not shortened, no one would be saved. Do these words of Jesus come from the Book of Enoch, or do they both draw from the same divine source? This question is critical, because if Jesus knew and quoted from the Book of Enoch, this book's significance is much greater. Another striking prophecy in the Book of Enoch is the increase of natural phenomena. In the last days, earthquakes will multiply, climate will change, seasons will be confused, people won't understand the reason for these changes. Is this prophecy being fulfilled today? Climate crisis, extreme weather events, seasonal anomalies, all of these have increased in recent years. Science can explain the physical causes of these events, but the Book of Enoch says these events have spiritual meaning. The earth won't be able to bear the weight of sin, then nature will rebel. This perspective brings a different view to today's environmental crisis. Perhaps environmental pollution isn't just a technical problem. Maybe this is the physical manifestation of humanity's spiritual condition. You don't have to accept this viewpoint, but it's worth considering. Is there a connection between humanity's moral decline and environmental decline? The Book of Enoch is clear. When people violate nature's laws, nature also opposes them. This includes not only ecological laws but also moral laws. According to Enoch, there's a deep connection between humanity and nature. If humans are spiritually healthy, nature is healthy. This view may seem to contradict modern science, but in recent years, the holistic ecology movement has been saying similar things. Human behavior creates environmental impacts that have not only physical, but also psychological and spiritual dimensions. But the most striking aspect of the Book of Enoch is that it gives a message of hope following these negative prophecies. All these events are temporary. They're the birth pangs of a new age. In the end, righteousness will prevail. What does this message of hope mean for today? Climate crisis, social collapse, moral degeneration. Are these the end or signs of a new beginning? According to the Book of Enoch, this is a process of cleansing. The old system is collapsing, so a new one can be established. When evil has fully manifested itself, good will also manifest itself, and good will prevail. This perspective can change how we view current events. Perhaps the crises we're experiencing are the birth pangs of a better world. Isn't that a hopeful thought? That current chaos and confusion is actually harbinger of a better future. But the Book of Enoch sets a condition for this hope to be realized, the activation of the chosen ones. So this beautiful future doesn't come automatically, it comes through the efforts of the chosen ones. Who are these chosen ones? The Book of Enoch answers clearly, those who hear God's call and follow it. This isn't about race, nationality, or social status. It's a spiritual condition. Being chosen means being able to hear God's voice and trying to live the way He wants you to live. Here we come to the Book of Enoch's most practical message. This book isn't just talking about the future, it tells us how to live in the present. A life guide for the chosen ones. First, spend time with God daily. This isn't just prayer, it's constantly feeling God's presence. Second, live righteously. This isn't about being perfect, it's constantly trying to do what's right. Third, serve others. Being chosen isn't a privilege, but a responsibility. Fourth, guard the truth. Share the truths entrusted to you. Don't hide them. Fifth, be patient. Change takes time. Don't rush. Is this way of life applicable in today's world? Yes, it is. Actually, millions of people are trying to live this way. Perhaps that's what you're doing. Even watching this video is part of the search for truth. Most importantly, the Book of Enoch makes promises about the results of this lifestyle. Those who live this way will be fearless. God will be with them. They'll remain hopeful even in difficult times because they know the outcome. They won't be alone because they'll find each other. Are these promises coming true? Look at people sincere in their spiritual journey. Aren't they more peaceful? Don't they cope better with difficulties? Don't they connect with like-minded people? This too could be the fulfillment of Enoch's prophecies. But we mustn't forget the Book of Enoch's final warning. Continue to the end. The path is difficult, but the destination is beautiful. This warning is very critical for today, because the spiritual journey isn't easy. The system will oppose you. People will misunderstand you. Sometimes you'll feel alone. But Enoch says this is normal. It's expected. But don't give up, because the end of this journey is beautiful, living in God's kingdom. This isn't just heaven in the future. It's something that can happen right now. Peace within you, love around you, meaning in your life. This is God's kingdom. Now we come to perhaps the Book of Enoch's most shocking prophecy, the explosion of knowledge. Enoch says in the last days knowledge will multiply. People will want to know everything. But as knowledge increases, wisdom will decrease. Doesn't this prophecy perfectly describe our times? In the internet age, access to information has never been easier. We have all kinds of information at our fingertips, but at the same time, we've never been so confused. So much information, so little wisdom, lots of data, but little understanding. Do you sometimes feel overwhelmed by information overload? Do you want to know everything but realize you don't really understand anything? The Book of Enoch explains why this is dangerous. When knowledge is used without wisdom, it leads to pride. The proud person thinks they have no need of God. Doesn't this describe today's scientific attitude? Science is a wonderful tool, but some people make science almost a religion. Science can explain everything, they say. But the Book of Enoch says, knowledge is limited, wisdom is limitless. What is wisdom? Wisdom is the art of using knowledge correctly, and wisdom comes from God. Another striking prophecy in the Book of Enoch is accelerated communication. In the last days, people will communicate very rapidly. An event at one end of the world will be known immediately at the other end. Doesn't this prophecy accurately describe the age of internet and social media? But Enoch warns of negative consequences. Fast communication will lead to rapid spread of false news. People won't be able to distinguish truth from falsehood. Fake news, disinformation, the post-truth age, all of this appears in Enoch's prophecy from 3,000 years ago. How are such detailed predictions possible? Is it just coincidence or truly divine revelation? The Book of Enoch is clear. This information came from God. He showed me what will happen in the future. If this is true, then other prophecies in the Book of Enoch could also be accurate. For example, this prophecy, people will worship their own creations. Is this happening today? Technology addiction, social media obsession, fascination with artificial intelligence. Could these be modern forms of idolatry? People almost worship technologies they've created. They've made their entire lives dependent on these technologies. But the Book of Enoch doesn't only give negative prophecies, it also shows solutions. In this confusion, those seeking truth will be guided. They'll be able to distinguish right from wrong. But how? According to Enoch, the solution is to follow God's Spirit. The human mind can be deceived, but God's Spirit cannot be deceived. This is a very practical solution for today. When you receive information, don't just use logic, use your spiritual intuition too. Does this information bring peace or create confusion? Does this information increase love or incite hatred? Does this knowledge encourage humility or pride? These questions are key to distinguishing true information from false information. Have you ever tried this method, evaluating information you receive not only with logic, but also with spiritual intuition? The Book of Enoch is insistent about this. The greatest deception in the last days will be denying spiritual things. People will believe only in visible things. They'll reject the spiritual dimension. This prophecy is also being fulfilled today. materialism, secularism, rejection of the spiritual dimension. These are diseases of the modern age. But Enoch says the person who rejects the spiritual dimension has lost half of themselves. Because humans aren't just body, they're also soul, and the person who neglects the soul dimension can never be fully happy. This brings us to the Book of Enoch's greatest message. Humans are both physical and spiritual beings. They need to nourish both. Physical needs, food, shelter, security. Spiritual needs, meaning, purpose, relationship with God. Today's humans can fulfill their physical needs, but their spiritual needs are starving. That's why there's so much depression, anxiety, feelings of meaninglessness. The Book of Enoch offers a solution to this problem: walk with God. What does that mean? Spending time with Him daily, trying to listen to His voice, trying to live the way He wants you to live. This lifestyle satisfies spiritual hunger. It makes you feel complete. How do you meet your spiritual needs? How do you approach this? This brings us to the most striking aspect of Enoch's story. He didn't just give prophecies, he also considered how to preserve these prophecies. The center of this preservation plan was Ethiopia. Why Ethiopia? How did this book spread from there to the world? We'll discover this now. Finally, the Book of Enoch's most critical warning for today. The time to choose has come. You'll either choose truth or lies. Either you'll choose light or darkness. There's no middle way. This choice confronts us every day. Which news will you believe? Which values will you embrace? Which lifestyle will you choose? Which future will you help build? The Book of Enoch says, these choices aren't innocent. Every choice you make either brings you closer to God or pushes you further away. Most importantly, the consequences of these choices affect not only you but also future generations. That's why Enoch's message is so important. He reminds us, your life isn't just your own. It's part of a bigger plan. How does this perspective change our lives? As we ponder this question, let us now uncover how the Book of Enoch was preserved and survived to the present day. Why Ethiopia? We've touched on this question before, but now it's time to give you the complete answer. The only reason we have the Book of Enoch today is because of the incredible resistance of one nation in the farthest corner of the world. This story of resistance might be even more miraculous than the story of Enoch himself. 1600 years. For 16 centuries, there was a systematic campaign to erase this book. It started in Rome and swept across the Western world. The Book of Enoch was banned, burned, and nearly forgotten, but one country, only one country, resisted: Ethiopia. And it's because of their resistance that I can share this story with you today. But first, you need to understand something crucial. Ethiopia's protection of this book was no accident. It was part of a much deeper plan. Remember what's written in the Book of Enoch. These words will be preserved for generations to come. They will be hidden in a distant land, and in due time they will appear again. Was this prophecy pointing to Ethiopia? Ethiopia has a long Christian history. Remember the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts chapter 8. The Apostle Philip baptized this man, and he took his faith back to his homeland. This happened in the middle of the 1st century AD. So Ethiopia was introduced to Christianity even before Rome officially adopted it. Think about this for a moment. Do you think it's a coincidence? Because Ethiopia wasn't just an early Christian nation, it was also a country with very strong ties to Israelite tradition. According to an ancient Ethiopian text called the Kebra Nagast, the Glory of Kings, the Queen of Sheba was Ethiopian. After her visit to King Solomon, she took the Ark of the Covenant to Ethiopia. Is this story legend or fact? We don't know for certain, but here's what matters. The Ethiopians saw themselves as the spiritual heirs of Israel. So for them, the Book of Enoch wasn't just some ancient text. It was part of their spiritual identity. By the 4th century, when Ethiopia officially became Christian, it was too late for Rome's system of control to reach them. When King Izana accepted Christianity, he declared, "We will keep our own traditions. No one can tell us what to read and what not to read." This statement was critical. It meant that Ethiopia did not recognize Rome's religious authority. Rome was saying, the Bible contains 66 books. Ethiopia was saying, our Bible contains 81 books, and Enoch is one of them. This wasn't just a religious dispute. It was a struggle for cultural independence. Think about it. If Ethiopia had submitted to Rome's decision, we wouldn't know the Book of Enoch today. But their resistance wasn't easy. Rome's oppression wasn't only religious, it was also economic and political. From the 5th century onward, some countries cut off trade with Ethiopia. Restrictions were placed on Ethiopian traders because they read heretical books. Some Ethiopian clergymen began to waver. Maybe we should do what Rome says. This pressure is becoming too heavy. But the leaders of the Ethiopian church remained determined. Archbishop Abuna Salama said, "It is our duty to protect these books entrusted to us. We cannot abandon this sacred trust." This determination lasted for generations. In the 6th century, the rise of Islam brought new challenges for Ethiopia. The country became surrounded by Islamic nations. Trade routes were cut off. Ethiopia became almost completely isolated, but this isolation also provided protection. Now Rome's pressure was weakened. Ethiopia was on its own, and in this isolation, it preserved its ancient traditions even more fiercely. The Book of Enoch continued to be carefully copied in Ethiopian monasteries. Each generation passed it on to the next. This wasn't just book preservation, this was identity preservation. The Ethiopians knew that if they lost this book, they would lose their spiritual roots. This work of protection wasn't just the duty of priests, it was the responsibility of the entire community. In Ethiopia, parents told their children the stories of Enoch. His ascent to the 7 heavens, his battle with the fallen angels, his prophecies about the end times. These stories became part of Ethiopian folklore. Enoch was even mentioned in traditional Ethiopian songs. Enoch walked with God. He saw the secrets of the heavens one by one. He wrote that great book for us. Ethiopia preserved that treasure. This song was sung in Ethiopia for centuries. The people felt that protecting the Book of Enoch wasn't only the church's responsibility, it was theirs too. This social ownership was the biggest reason the book survived. Does this remind you of anything? Protecting truth isn't just the job of experts, it's the responsibility of all of us. In the 7th and 8th centuries, travelers who came to Ethiopia recorded with amazement. There are strange books in this country. They tell stories that are not in the Bible as we know it. They speak of angels, giants, and secret knowledge. When most of these travelers returned to Europe, they described what they had seen as superstition. The Christianity they knew didn't include these things, but some wondered, what is really written in these books? Unfortunately, reaching Ethiopia was extremely difficult at that time. Geographical barriers, political tensions, language differences, everything kept these books isolated from the world. In the 9th and 10th centuries, there was a great cultural renaissance in Ethiopia. The Ge'ez language flourished, art was created, churches were built, and most importantly, ancient texts were recopied. Dozens of new copies of the Book of Enoch were made during this period. Every monastery had at least one copy. The Ethiopians understood something profound. These books had to be preserved not only for their own country, but for all humanity. A famous Ethiopian saint named Abuna Takla Haimanot said, "These books entrusted to us will be a light for the whole world in the future. Our duty is to protect them and share them with the world when the time comes." These words were prophetic. Indeed, centuries later, these books would illuminate the world. In the 11th and 12th centuries, when the Crusades began, some Crusader knights reached as far as Ethiopia. They saw the Ethiopian Christians as heretics because their beliefs were different from Rome's teachings. But some knights were surprised by the ancient Ethiopian texts. These seemed to be much older than the Bible as we know it. One crusading knight wrote after returning home, "In Ethiopia, there are books from ancient times. They speak of prophets who lived long before Jesus. Are there truths that are not in our Bible?" He wasn't the only one asking this question, but at that time it was dangerous to ask such questions. The Inquisition had been established. Anyone who questioned the church's teachings could be accused of heresy. So many people kept their curiosity to themselves, but that curiosity never disappeared. In the 13th and 14th centuries, the Mongol invasions and the Black Death ravaged Europe, but Ethiopia continued to live in its own world, far from these disasters. This isolation was a blessing for the Book of Enoch. During the turmoil in Europe, many libraries were destroyed and countless books were lost. But Ethiopia was different. There, the preservation of ancient tradition was systematized. Every monastery had a bookkeeper. His sole task was to copy old texts and pass them to future generations. A bookkeeper named Abba Georgis wrote in the 14th century, "These books in our hands are not only ours, they are the common heritage of all humanity. If we cannot protect them, they may be lost forever." How true these words were. At that time, there were no copies of the Book of Enoch anywhere else in the world. In the West, the systematic destruction was complete. In the East, in Islamic territories, this book was nowhere to be found. There was only Ethiopia and their resistance. In the 15th century, something changed. With the invention of the printing press, information began to flow faster. This increased curiosity about Ethiopia. Marco Polo's travel accounts mentioned Ethiopia. He described it as the kingdom of the Christian Prester John. This description aroused great curiosity in Europe. Is there really such a Christian kingdom? Here's a very important point. For the first time, Europe began to see Ethiopia as a potential ally. The Ottoman Empire was growing stronger, and Europe was under threat. In such circumstances, a Christian state behind the Ottomans was very valuable. In the 16th century, Portuguese explorers managed to reach Ethiopia. They were surprised by what they found. This wasn't a primitive society. Ethiopia was an advanced civilization, with churches, palaces, and written literature. Most surprising of all, ancient Christian texts. The Portuguese missionary Francisco Alvarez wrote in 1520, "People in this country speak of books we know nothing about. Enoch, Jubilees, Baruch, these names are foreign to us, but they consider these books as sacred as the Bible." Alvarez's words were the first shock to Europe. How is this possible? Are there Bible books we don't know about? Church authorities immediately tried to contain the situation. These books must be fake, or they must be very old and unreliable. But some began to wonder, is there really something we missed? Pope Paul III established a special commission in 1540. The task of this commission was to investigate what these strange books in Ethiopia are. The commission gave these instructions to missionaries sent to Ethiopia. Examine these books. If they seem credible, bring copies, but do not let the public hear about them. At this point, a critical development took place. The Ethiopians understood the real intentions of the Portuguese. The Portuguese hadn't only come to make friends, they also wanted to link the Ethiopian church to Rome, and that meant they would have to give up heretical texts like the Book of Enoch. Emperor Gelawdewos had a very clear answer. Our faith goes back centuries. We will not follow your new rules. We will not give up our books. This answer was disappointing for the Portuguese. They wanted both political alliance and religious unity. But Ethiopia was only willing to accept political alliance. It would not compromise on religious matters. This was the beginning of a tension that would last for centuries. In the 17th century, Jesuit missionaries came to Ethiopia. Their goal was very clear, to convert Ethiopians to the true faith. They were led by a brilliant missionary named Pedro Paez. He read the Book of Enoch and realized, this book is very powerful. If you cannot control it, you cannot control the Ethiopians. Paez devised a cunning strategy. He wouldn't ban the Book of Enoch outright. Instead, he would offer more reliable alternatives. The Book of Enoch is old and comes from uncertain sources, he said, but our Bible is more reliable. This strategy partly worked. Some Ethiopian clerics were convinced, but the people resisted. The Book of Enoch was part of their identity. To abandon it was to lose themselves. In 1632 there was great drama. Emperor Susenyos had converted to Catholicism under pressure from the Jesuits. The first thing he did was ban the Book of Enoch. But the public reaction was fierce. Riots broke out. Civil war erupted. The emperor realized, this book is very important to these people. If I ban it, I will lose my throne. In 1636, he had to back down. He rejected Catholicism and returned to the old faith. This once again proved the Book of Enoch's place in Ethiopian society. It wasn't just a religious text, it was part of the national identity. Ethiopians said these books are our cultural DNA. If we lose them, we forget who we are. Thanks to their resistance, the Book of Enoch was preserved once again. The Jesuits were expelled from Ethiopia. As they left, they said, one day the true nature of these books will be understood. Then it will be seen that we were right, how wrong they were. The real thing to understand is how they tried to hide the truth. The 18th century was a difficult time for Ethiopia. The country was divided by internal conflicts. During this period, known as the Zamana Masafint, the Age of Princes, central authority was weakened. But even in this chaotic period, the Book of Enoch continued to be protected. This was because protecting this book was no longer just the job of authorities. It was embedded in the DNA of the people. Every family kept a copy of the Book of Enoch in their home. Children were told these stories, how Enoch walked with God, how the fallen angels were punished, What would happen in the last days? These stories were passed down through generations. They never disappeared. Then one of the greatest turning points in history took place. In 1769, the Scottish traveller James Bruce arrived in Ethiopia. Bruce wasn't just a traveller, he was also a researcher interested in ancient texts. What he encountered in Ethiopia completely amazed him. The Book of Enoch, lost for 1600 years, here it was. And not just one copy, dozens of copies. Bruce realized the significance of this discovery. He took 3 copies of the Book of Enoch back with him to Europe, and so 1600 years later, the Book of Enoch returned to the Western world. The 3 copies James Bruce brought back to Europe in 1773 were a bombshell. When scholars at Oxford University saw this book for the first time, they were stunned. How can this be? How could a book lost for 1600 years have been preserved in Ethiopia? But the first reaction wasn't surprise, it was skepticism. This must be a fake. The Ethiopians must have written this book themselves over the centuries. Why did they think that? Because it was much easier than admitting their own deception. But when linguists analyzed the Ge'ez copies, a surprising fact emerged. These texts were genuinely ancient. Word structures, grammatical rules, spelling, everything pointed to antiquity. This could not be a fake. When Richard Lawrence at Oxford produced the first English translation, there was panic in church circles. This book has the same language as the New Testament. This is where the quotations in the letter of Jude come from. This discovery turned church history upside down. When Lawrence's translation was published in 1821, a great debate erupted in Europe. Some said, this book was written before Jesus, so the roots of Christianity go back much further. Others argued, this book is dangerous, it will confuse the people. The church officially declared, the Book of Enoch is an interesting historical document, but it has no canonical value. But this explanation wasn't enough. The questions kept multiplying. If the Apostle Jude quoted from this book, does that mean he considered it sacred? Did Jesus himself know this book? Why was it kept secret for 1600 years? These questions remain relevant today, and the answers are still disturbing. At the end of the 19th century, a critical development took place in Germany. German researchers found traces of the Book of Enoch not only in Ethiopia, but elsewhere too. There were fragments of Enoch in papyri found in Egypt. In Greece, references to Enoch were found in ancient texts. These discoveries proved this. The Book of Enoch was once very widespread. It was known not only in Ethiopia, but throughout the ancient world. At the beginning of the 20th century, R.H. Charles in England produced a complete and comprehensive translation of the Book of Enoch. Charles's work shook the academic world. He hadn't just made a translation, he had revealed the book's historical importance. This book had a great influence on early Christianity. Charles said, the New Testament writers read this book and were influenced by it. This claim was very radical. The church had maintained, the New Testament is completely original and unique, but Charles was proving with evidence that the situation was different. At this point, the church faced a great dilemma. It could either accept Charles's findings or ignore them. The church chose the second option. Charles's work was ignored and even criticized in some circles. These studies undermine faith, they said. The public should not be informed about these things. But the truth was now clear, and it could not be hidden. Then in 1947, one of the greatest discoveries in history took place, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Among the ancient texts found in the caves of Qumran were 11 different copies of the Book of Enoch. These copies dated to only 100-200 years before Jesus' time. Most importantly, these copies matched the Ethiopian texts almost exactly. This discovery proved that the Ethiopians had perfectly preserved this book for 1600 years. No changes had been made. The Qumran discovery was important, not only for Enoch, but also for other forbidden books. The Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, and many other secret texts were found there. All their stories were interconnected. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls was a disaster for the church. Now there was too much evidence to deny. The Book of Enoch was indeed an ancient text. It was widely read in Jesus' time. New Testament writers knew it. Ethiopia had preserved this book perfectly. What did the church do faced with this evidence? The same old tactic, silence. Dozens of books have been written about the Dead Sea Scrolls, but the church made no official announcement about the discovery of the Book of Enoch. This silence spoke volumes. The dawn of the Internet age marked a new era for the Book of Enoch. It was no longer the monopoly of academics. Everyone could read it. In the 21st century, interest in the Book of Enoch exploded. YouTube videos, blogs, forums. It was being discussed everywhere. These discussions were disturbing the church. People were asking questions. Why were we never told about this book? What else is the church hiding? What was the real history of Christianity? How did the modern church deal with this situation? It used the same old strategy. The Book of Enoch is interesting but unreliable. Don't let people think too much about it. But this time it didn't work. Information could no longer be controlled. Today, in the 2020s, the situation around the Book of Enoch is very different. Ethiopia still considers this book sacred. For them, nothing has changed. In the Western world, there's a great awakening. People are searching for their spiritual roots. This search brings them to the Book of Enoch. Especially the younger generation is showing great interest in this book. The more they investigate, the more they discover the truth. What do you think? Is it a coincidence that the Book of Enoch is popular again today, or is the timing perfect? The story of the Book of Enoch teaches us this: truth can never be completely hidden. It will always find a way to emerge. Ethiopia's 1600 years of resistance is the best example of this. They said, "We will protect this treasure, no matter what happens." And they did. If we can read the Book of Enoch today, it's because of the sacrifice of Ethiopian ancestors. They didn't bow to church pressure. They didn't give in to political pressure. They didn't give up in the face of economic hardship. Because they knew this book is not only their treasure, but the treasure of all humanity. The journey of the Book of Enoch also shows us this. Sometimes the greatest truths come from the most unexpected places. Who would have thought that a book hidden for 1600 years would be preserved in the mountains of Africa? Who would have thought that a discovery that would change world history would come to Europe in the bag of a Scottish traveller? What does this tell you about life? Maybe the most important things come from the most unexpected places. Now we come to the real question. After hearing this story, how will you look at the Book of Enoch? Will you see it simply as an ancient text, or as part of the forbidden truth? What does it mean to you that this book was kept secret for 1600 years? Most importantly, what messages does this book carry for today? You now know the story of Enoch. You know why his book was banned. You've seen how this book was preserved. But the critical question is, what will you do now? Which side will you choose when faced with this information? The side where traditional church authority says, these books cannot be trusted, or the side that says, seek the truth and you will find it? This choice isn't only religious, it's also a choice about your philosophy of life. Because Enoch's message is, humanity can communicate directly with God. Are you going to accept this message, or will you say, this is too dangerous, I'll stay away? These questions aren't easy to answer. You're not just making a decision about a book, you're determining your outlook on life. You've heard the story of Enoch. You learned that a man who lived 3,000 years ago walked with God. You saw that the revelations he received became a book. You realized that this book was banned for 1600 years, but was preserved in Ethiopia. Now you face a choice. Let's talk about this in detail. Now we reach the most crucial moment of this story, because after hearing everything I've shared with you, you must make a choice. This isn't simply a question of what do you think about a book. This is something much deeper. How will you search for truth? Here's what you now know. Enoch appears in just 2 sentences in Genesis, yet his story is enormous. His book was read and treasured for 3,000 years. It was even the favorite book of Jesus' disciples. But then it was systematically banned, burned, and forgotten for 1600 years. So what will you do now? What stance will you take when faced with this knowledge? You can no longer say, I didn't know. You are now aware of these facts. For someone who knows the truth, there are 2 paths. The first path, this information is too complex. Let me stick with traditional teachings. Whatever the church says must be true. The second path, these facts are crucial. I will consider them in my own spiritual journey. Both paths are valid, but both have consequences. If you choose the first path, the traditional way, you'll be comfortable because no one expects you to question anything. You simply need to believe. You'll feel secure because millions of people share your beliefs. You'll be socially accepted because you won't have any dangerous thoughts. But here's what also happens. Your curiosity may fade because you've learned that questioning is risky. Your spiritual growth might become limited because you're satisfied with only what's given to you. And most importantly, you may always carry a nagging doubt inside. What truths am I missing? If you choose the second path, the path of personal discovery, you'll be free because you can seek truth on your own terms. You'll grow spiritually because you'll draw wisdom from many sources. You can develop a deeper faith because faith that survives questioning becomes unshakable. But at the same time, you may feel isolated because most people aren't walking your path. You may face criticism. Why can't you just follow everyone else? You may feel uncertain because you'll encounter conflicting information. But which path is correct? Only you can answer that question. But I can tell you this, Enoch's story represents the second path. He wasn't satisfied with tradition. He wanted to speak directly with God. And he did. He didn't ask, what do others say? He asked, what does God say? He didn't surrender to fear. He kept searching for truth. That's why his story holds such power. But listen carefully. This choice isn't just about the Book of Enoch. This choice defines your entire approach to life. Will you blindly trust authority, or will you investigate for yourself? Will you accept everything you're told, or will you ask questions? Will you take responsibility for your spiritual journey, or will you follow the path others have laid out for you? This is Enoch's message. Humanity can communicate directly with God. If you embrace this message, you won't just read the Book of Enoch. You'll try to walk with God in your own life. But what does this mean practically? How does it change your daily existence? If you truly choose to walk with God, these transformations will occur. First, prayer stops being a shopping list. It becomes genuine conversation. You ask God questions and expect answers. Second, Bible reading stops being mindless routine. You examine each verse, asking, what does this mean for me? Third, church attendance stops being a social event. You go there to truly encounter God. Fourth, when making decisions, you ask, what does God want, not what will people think? Fifth, you become more authentic and compassionate with others because you see them as God's children too. None of these changes are easy, but they're all possible. The question is, are you ready for this transformation? Remember this, Enoch's story isn't finished. It continues today. Just as Enoch walked with God, so can you. Just as Enoch received divine revelations, so can you. Just as Enoch transcended his time, so can you. But there's one requirement. You must have courage, because there's always resistance against truth seekers. The system doesn't like questioners. Authority doesn't appreciate those who don't need it. The 1600-year ban on Enoch's book proves this. But you're hearing this story today, despite those prohibitions. Is that coincidence? Perhaps this is a sign for you. Perhaps God is trying to tell you something by bringing you this information. Maybe he wants you to walk like Enoch. But be warned, this isn't an easy path. Enoch's journey was never simple. He saw things others couldn't understand. He lived truths no one believed. He thought centuries ahead of his time. And he paid a heavy price. He was often alone. He found little understanding. His book was banned for 16 centuries. But what happened in the end? Truth prevailed. Today, millions know Enoch's story. They discuss his prophecies. They're moved by his message. This shows you something vital. The struggle for truth is never wasted. Now it's your turn. After hearing this story, which path do you choose? Will you say, this is too complicated, I'll stick with what I know? Or will you say, this is crucial, I'm going to search for my own truth? Only you can answer this question. No one can decide for you. But know this, both choices have consequences, and you must live with those consequences. If you choose to seek truth, you won't be alone. Millions are walking the same path, and most importantly, God will walk with you, just as he walked with Enoch, just as he walked with the Ethiopians for 1600 years, just as he walks today with all who seek truth. We've reached the end of this story, but it's not really an ending. It can be your new beginning, because Enoch's story reminds you, you too can walk with God. This wasn't just for a man 3,000 years ago. It's true for you today. Think, pray, and decide. Because God is waiting for your answer too, just as he waited for Enoch's. And who knows, maybe your story will inspire future generations. Maybe you too will be remembered as someone who walked with God. It's possible, because God doesn't change. He still wants to walk with people the same way. Now, facing these profound questions, it's time to turn to God together. Because Enoch's story teaches us that real answers come from him. Just as Enoch spoke with God and walked beside him, let us speak with him now. Let us pray that he guides us on this journey, that he shows us the right path, because this story isn't just about the past, it's about our lives today, and God expects us to come to him with the same sincerity that Enoch showed. And now let us pray together. Dear Heavenly Father, today we heard Enoch's incredible story. We learned how he walked with you and spoke with you directly. Now we understand that this ancient story isn't just from 3,000 years ago, it's written for us today. Father, we confess that most of the time we've lived distant from you. We've blindly accepted what others told us without daring to speak with you ourselves. Instead of taking responsibility for our spiritual journey, we've followed paths laid down by others. We've chosen comfort over truth, preferring what feels safe and doesn't challenge us. But today, Enoch's encouraging story reached our hearts. We realize you're still the same God. You still want to speak with your children and walk alongside them. You're still ready to reveal hidden truths and share spiritual wisdom. Just as fallen angels once taught forbidden knowledge in Enoch's time, today our world overflows with deceptive information. Technology, media, artificial intelligence, all trying to mislead humanity. Father, help us recognize these modern systems of deception. Give us Enoch's courage, Father. Like him, let us dare to build an intimate relationship with you. Like him, let us fearlessly seek truth. Like him, help us hear your voice even in things others call dangerous. Because you are not dangerous, you are truth itself, and truth is only dangerous to systems built on lies. Strengthen us in this spiritual battle, Father. The war Enoch witnessed continues today, only the weapons have changed. They once taught physical strength. Now they teach mental manipulation. They once taught weapon making, now they teach mass control, but you haven't changed. You're still the same God. Give us strength during lonely times, Father. Sometimes truth seekers walk alone, just as Enoch was often misunderstood, but remind us that you're with us. Walk with us as you walked with Enoch. Just as he could see heaven's secrets, open our spiritual eyes too. Help us preserve truth in this age of deception, Father. Protect us from social media lies, fake news and propaganda machines. We're living in the last days Enoch prophesied. Lies will appear as truth, and truth will be called lies. That time is now. Give us clear vision. Bless everyone listening to this story, Father. Bless the curiosity and searching awakening in their hearts. Guide them on their unique spiritual journeys. You call some to deep revelation like Enoch, others to guard truth like the Ethiopians. You call each of us differently. May we all hear our calling. Finally, Father, reveal other hidden truths in this world. Like Enoch's story, what treasures await our discovery? What secrets hide in the Book of Jubilees, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary? Prepare us for deeper truths. You want us to know everything, not just fragments. Gather the chosen ones in this age, Father. Let them come from earth's four corners, as Enoch prophesied. Let them find each other through the internet and build your kingdom together. We're stronger united than alone. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Closing message. If this story stirred something in your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. We have many more secrets from forbidden books like Enoch's to share with you. Write in the comments, what do you think about the Book of Enoch after hearing this story? Do you experience similar searching in your own spiritual journey? Don't forget to share this video with people you love. This story isn't just yours, it belongs to everyone searching for truth. Remember, in our upcoming videos, we'll reveal secrets from other banned books, like the Book of Jubilees. Why did churches try to hide it? What shocking truths does it contain? Turn on notifications so you won't miss them. Like Enoch's journey of walking with God, we wish you God's blessings on your own journey. See you in the next video.